Hello and welcome to our viewers on cruxinvestor.com and also to our listeners on Cruxcast, our new podcast series. We're going to be speaking with Chris Taylor of Great Bear Resources. Hi Chris, how are you?
Great. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah,
Matthew,
good.
sorry.
Matt, it's good.
How formal do you want me?
That's fine. That's fine. Matt's good. So we spoke, about what, 6 weeks ago now, 7 weeks ago, in
I would
London.
imagine.
You've
Yep.
been all around the world. We've seen you on all sorts of interviews, telling the story, which is great. But we wanted to get an update on what's been going on. So can we just start with like a two minute helicopter view, and then we're going to kick off with some questions.
Yeah, no problem. Since we met the last time, I believe I was in London meeting with some groups that had wanted to meet with Great Bear. So we've effectively begun our drill program again. We've upscaled it to about 60,000 meters. I believe we were talking about that before. I think we had about a 2-week hiatus when we were waiting for snow to thaw out and everything. Now we're back drilling again. And we have several drill holes that are completed since that time. I believe in terms of results that are public, we had some very nice intercepts that we hit by drilling deeper into our main targets. That was really nice for us to see because Red Lake, the area that we're working, is well known for having these deep-seated high-grade gold deposits. So we seem to be seeing the same characteristics, which bodes really well for us over the long term.
And because you were talking about like 800 meter drilling before, and when you say deep, you mean deeper than that?
We keep initially we step out sort of further along strike to make the zones broader, and then we go down in the new areas. And that's what we've done is effectively the areas that we already knew about. We've gone down deeper. We had some 30-meter, 100-meter step downs, and we've made them longer as well. So they're growing in both directions.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I would like to get into the kind of robust strategy that you've employed here, because that's different from a lot of the companies we talk to. But let's start off. Nice generic one. What's happening with the gold market?
Oh God, this is the question I dread getting all the time. So I don't have a crystal ball. I hate having to prophecy over gold prices. It's basically, I think these days there's a bit of a boost off of Trump's latest tweets or policy maneuvers vis-a-vis China. If you ask me how that's going to turn out over the long term, I'm a geologist. I find the gold in the ground. I don't dictate the market pricing for the material. Sorry about that.
Everyone's struggling with it because all the norms, the conventional norms as to what dictates, gold succeeding because we need safe haven and all of that, it doesn't seem to be working anywhere. The rules, the old rules don't seem to be applying. But even with regards to what's going on with regards to your shares, the trading, it's been, since we've seen you, it's come off a bit, it's come back a bit. The retail guys speculating heavily about what's going on, what's not going, and of course, and of course, some of them would claim to be great technically, and others great financially, but they're the guys that affect the movement in the share price, right? So,
Yeah.
how do you get the balance between focusing on what is a very strong institutional and high net worth investor base and the retail guys? I mean, how do you manage that dynamic?
It's actually a really good question. It's something we have to think about, obviously, as the company doing this work. So our primary growth strategy is to drill off our zones in a way that the larger, more sophisticated investors want to see. So effectively, if we were like many of our peers, we would hit the highest grade material and then drill a dense pattern around it and try to duplicate those numbers as much as possible. There's various deposits I'm aware of that are effectively, they're cloning drill holes. Our strategy is to show the scope and size of what we're dealing with, and that's the strategy that will yield the long-term benefits, and that's what we're doing. So if you look at our long sections, our cross sections, our drill patterns, it's all to show size, scope, regional significance, and ultimately, if we're successful, we're going to show that the Dixie project can be a world-class deposit. It's an early discovery. We're not there yet, but every drill hole that goes in shows that kind of potential. That's really our long-term strategy, and we're quite different from many other companies out there with that strategy, frankly.
No, for sure, and like I say, I want to come on to that because when you first told me about it, it just made perfect sense to me. But I'm a certain type of investor, okay. So I want to talk to you. I want to get into this because you tell your technical story extremely well to lots of people, but I want to focus on this aspect, which is institutional investors. They are presumably slightly better informed, better trained, in terms of their ability to interpret what you're doing than retail, who perhaps don't have access to the information or the necessary, the ability to interpret technically. So what are your institutional shareholders ring up and talk to you about? Because you've got a great relationship with them, so they know your strategy. But what are their concerns when you get on that monthly phone call?
Well, there's a series of check boxes that we continue to check off, right? So they all have a similar viewpoint from that perspective. They're looking for continuity of grade, high grade, what ultimately deposit grade will be, and then they're looking for size. And when they see all of these things continually verified with the ongoing drilling, it's very easy for new companies to make a discovery where they generate good intercepts. That happens frequently. Not all the time, but frequently. Most of those deposits don't go anywhere because they just lack the size and scale. I know I've used this number before, but it's something like about well over 90% of all global gold deposits are under a couple million ounces of gold. What we want to be able to show these people is that we have potential for significant size, and that means systematic drilling, systematic growth, and it's very different in terms of strategy than what we would do if we were feeding a market per se, a retail base with assays. Ultimately, there is compatibility, there is overlap. I mean, when I was in school, we looked at something called a Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is two big circles that overlap each other, and the intervening space, you can do a mathematical equation that shows how much they overlap. There is overlap between the retail and institutional base, but it's not 100%, right? So we focus on the big scale potential, showing companies, showing funds that we may have the big size goods.
Right. So, but this, I guess, this comes back to. I guess we're going to talk about strategy here. So, you are kind of famous, certainly in terms of the company I've looked at, for not wanting to put out a resource yet. Okay, and I get it. The institutional guys get it. Retail guys, some do, some don't. Again, so how are you managing that dialogue? I mean, I'm just wondering how you talk to this audience, because it's less sophisticated, but no less passionate about your company and what you're doing. But it seems to me you keep having to tell that story and explain it and justify it. I mean, how do you do that?
With some, I mean, what I would say, this is my frank answer as Chris. Right. This is Chris, who has made and lost a lot of money in the markets over the years, who has also been involved with putting 3 mines into production with my former employer, Imperial Metals. So I would say to everybody that is in a rush, when you start to see us get a resource out in the public space, we are starting to have an idea about the size of certain parts of the system. The longer it takes us to get to that point, the bigger it is. So this is it. I mean, we're not in a rush, because if you're on a big system, we're looking at gold over many kilometers. So we see strike extent of many kilometers along the project. We have roughly a 20-kilometer long primary target and a number of secondary targets, which are several kilometers long, each of which we've only drilled a few of these so far. So when we come to market with a resource eventually, it will be under the understanding that it's characterizing a portion of the project, and it'll be in the context of what the global scope of that is. So the retail investors that are in a rush, in a way, by us taking longer, it's a very good sign. It's like, and we get this also, just to speak to a similar point, it comes down to getting assay results. And in our case, a lot of the time when we take a while to get assays to market, it's because we've got, in our case, high grade gold. And what that means is, we saw in our early news releases during discovery, for instance, we had one piece of rock. I remember looking at this in drill core, and I'm digressing a little bit. I'm sorry to take a long
I appreciate it. It's great insight.
Yeah, but what we saw a chunk of drill core that had the most gold of any sample on the property, and visually. So we looked at it, we thought this is really an exceptional sample. This was actually part of our hinge zone discovery. When it came back from the lab, from assay, it was 1.5 grams per ton. So it was one of the lowest grade samples that we'd done. So what it turned out, and we've now fixed this process with the labs, but there was so much gold in the sample, it just wasn't able to go into the assay machine because gold is very malleable and ductile. So when you try to grind up the rock, you end up with a ball of gold that doesn't make it into the machine, and you don't get any of the gold reporting into the assay result. We fixed that. We now do gravimetrics assays. We do metallic screens. Sometimes when it takes us longer than we expect to get assays back, it's because we're dealing with very high grade numbers. And frankly, this happened in our last news release. We had a sample that came back 200 grams per ton, right, that we published. So these are bonanza grade gold results. The initial assays, when they come back from the lab, were very much lower. So we have procedures in place that catch underreported gold, and we make sure that that doesn't happen. But when you have to assay something 3 times, that's a delay. So it's one of these things in terms of publishing a resource or getting assays out to market. I often get the question from the retail investors, drill must have missed, you must not hit anything. I can almost guarantee you with this project, it's almost the 180 degree opposite. Yeah. So that's just the way it is. It's big. There's lots of gold.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, correctly, you talk about being in the right postcode. You're in the right postcode. You're going to hit a significant amount of times. I'm sure of that. Yeah. So what I'm hearing there is the message to retail, and our viewers are retail high net worth family offices. We're trying to help educate them, and talking to people like yourself, and get an understanding of the process, so they feel more comfortable in investing in projects like this. Okay, so what I'm hearing is we can calm down a bit. Don't need to worry. It's actually good news that if results a little bit slower coming back, it's probably a good thing because of the type of project which you've got, the process that you're doing, the strategy that you have engaged. Yeah. So
it can
be okay.
Typically, yep. And we've been drilling constantly, right? We're now well over 100 drill holes into this project, but it's very early days. I would just remind everybody that in August of last year, the company was sitting at about a $10 million market cap or somewhere in that range. And it was because we're very early in the drilling process. We've now been drilling constantly over that intervening 9-month period, well over 100 holes on the project so far. We're increasing the number of drill rigs. It should help get assays to market, every 2 weeks to every 4 weeks. It'll be sometime in that framework. But as we drill more zones, as we drill deeper holes take longer to drill and they take longer to assay. So bringing in extra drill rigs, like we've announced, we're tripling the number of drill rigs from last year. We're up to 3. So that will definitely help. I would just encourage people that real discoveries, there's just only so fast we can drill it. This is a real discovery. We're drilling it as fast, as aggressively as possible, and it keeps expanding. So if you're interested in our progress, please follow it that way. The value comes in on these things once the boxes are checked off with the large companies and with the large funds, right? And that's the process that we're going through right now.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point to make, actually, Chris, because there are companies which are pumping the share price in the different ways that they can pump the share price, and it can be short-termism. You are building this thing out to be attractive, to be either taken out or get into production, obviously, because you'll give me that answer, won't you? You're definitely going into production because you've got to build it that way. You don't want that discount if you tell people you're going to be selling. So I like the rigor that you put into the process and the decision not to get distracted with resource numbers or worrying about the price on a day-to-day basis. It does though mean that you attract different sorts of investors, a slightly longer hold investor, because you're saying to people, we're building for the future. Would you agree with that? Would you say that's the kind of audience that you might attract, or not audience, shareholder you might attract?
Yeah, I would say that is very much a focus. And I know we've talked about this before, but Great Bear, it's like a decadal project for me. I got involved with it back in 2010. We're long-term. We are long-term shareholders. We are the ultimate long-term shareholders. We like to see like-minded participation because value comes in some cases with patience. And if you had sold out of Great Bear last year, we went from, I believe it was about 10 cents at the beginning of the year to 60 cents mid-year. If you had just settled on the triple that you would have got at that point, you would have missed out on the subsequent run. Likewise, right now, if we continue to be successful and you lose track of the progress and the growth in the company right now, you would not be exposed to any of the potential upside for all the next stages of the project, once we're further than 9 months into the discovery. So how many more discoveries are there to be made on the project? This is something we don't know yet, but we keep finding more gold. We keep expanding the system. I think it's very early days in this story, and we want to keep the share structure tight. And this speaks to your point of long-term shareholders. There's only 38 million shares out in the company. The lower that number is, the better the multiple on each share basis for everybody.
Well, let's quickly segue on that. Okay, so I think it's 50 million fully diluted. Is that right? 38? And it's 50 fully diluted.
48.
48,
yeah,
right.
Sorry,
yeah, of course. So and you've got a whole bunch of warrants kind of coming through.
That's largely dried up. The only remaining warrants that I know of are Rob McEwen, our biggest shareholder, and management effectively. Everything else has already been exercised. I had a warrant exercise come in the other day for 200 shares. I've never seen that in my life before. So I believe we have largely gone through the warrant overhang. So
it all counts. It all counts.
Yeah, exactly. We had to buy some pencils.
Right.
So,
good.
Anyway,
hope they're nice. Okay. So I just wanted to quickly deal with that and get that out of the way. Okay, but then so coming back to that. So if you're saying you've got some long-term institutional guys, and obviously Rob. And other high net worths in there, you're attracting the longer haul retail type of guys because the story you're telling is, we're still creating value here. There's more money to be had down the line. Probably, possibly. You couldn't say that, but I could. Do you experience movement in share because of liquidity and trading and volumes on a daily basis? So, retail, short-term retail, not necessarily day trading, but is still important to an organization. You're $100 million at the moment, right? And as you kind of move up through that value curve, those guys will still be important to you. So how, in the context of what we talked about, how are you going to manage that messaging to them? You've got to say, well, we've got some great catalysts, the phrase everyone likes to use coming up this year. We're building this thing out for the future, but if you want to come in now, get some value created, and then opt out, sell out, then that's fine by us. We don't mind. You've got to have that. This is what I mean. This kind of message that you need to get out there. So, are you talking to people? What are you saying to the market apart from the long-term message? What are you saying to other retail investors?
Well, there's a component of the retail base which does trade in and out of the stock. So we probably have, our estimate is about half of our shareholder base is in retail hands. And then is like recently is a good example. The past few weeks we went down and then we went back slingshotting back up. And a lot of this is based on short-term market fluctuations, the movement in gold prices. There was a big takeover that was announced a few days ago, Atlantic Gold for $800 million. So another Canadian project that's being purchased by an Australian entity in that case. So you get M&A activity that tends to be conducive to more liquid trading. It's basically a combination of factors, of macro market factors, gold price movements, and other, our own drill results. So our drill results, they've continuously been steady. So I think there's an element of fear which has been removed from the shareholder base. People are typically used to seeing like, well, they had good results this time, but next time, I'm really hesitant. So they have their finger on the sell trigger. I think we've got past that to a large extent because all of our news releases over the last several months have been very positive, all about growth, all about expansion. So there's ultimately, I can't dictate. If somebody decides that they want to sell their Great Bear and they think that they're going to make 10 times their money tomorrow by investing in a cannabis story or something else like that, they're going to do it. Typically, though, what we see is, and I talk to shareholders, retail shareholders daily. It's a daily enterprise. So I'll see that they sell a bit of their position. So they keep a core position and trade in and out of the rest of it. That's typical. And some retail shareholders that I know, these are smart people. Like, I mean, your comment early on about the institutional investment being more sophisticated. I have retail level shareholders that work in the industry that have accumulated between 1 million and 2 million shares of Great Bear over the last year. So these are technically retail people, but they are highly sophisticated. And I think on a rough basis, I know where about 7 or 8 million shares of the company sit in the hands of a few retail type people that have accumulated large positions. And it's a bit of a loaded question you're asking me. So the story is with these people, you can trade off of gold. There always is some liquidity in the stock. You can trade in and out of a position, or you can trade based on our fundamentals or a combination of both. That's entirely up to you as a shareholder. I just encourage anybody that is a shareholder to just watch what we're doing and let the guys in the field, the experts, do their thing. They've been very successful with it so far. If we think for whatever reason, we've been lucky enough to hit the only gold on the project by randomly going in and testing these new areas. We probably tested, my guess is about 5% of the area of the property so far. I mean, yeah. I'd be astonished if we had been smart enough to target the best zones or the only zones so early on in the exploration process. So as a geologist, a structural geologist, somebody with a mining background, I think there's a long way to go. That's the story that you can tell people that are interested in just the possibility that at any given time, there might be another transformative event in the company. It could happen. These areas, these districts are known for it. Otherwise, the long-term steady growth, the other component of our project, which is expanding the areas that we already know about, that generates and fuels that steady growth. The exploration component, where we continually test new areas, that's that possibility to have that additional blue sky. And both messages are appealing to the retail investor base or even the more sophisticated institutional investor base.
Okay, I buy that. So just to kind of finish off on slightly about the asset, I didn't necessarily want to talk about the asset per se, but it is in the context of your strategy. So we've interviewed a couple of Canadian gold players with large, resource number, 5-7 million ounces. It's you can probably work out who that might be. They're sitting on a bit of cash, so they've got some optionality in terms of how they play this cycle out. They continue to drill. At some point, your investors are going to want you to kind of put a red flag in the sand and say, right, okay, now's the time we're going to come up with a number. Now's the kind of time we're going to say to the market, here's what I think we've got, because the drilling is, I get it. I do get it. I think it's a great strategy, but at some point you're going to have to, pull the ripcord. And what's your sense of timing on that? You've been on it 9 years. You think there's a long-term project. How far would you go with the current strategy?
I guess with Dixie, we acquired this project 3.5 years ago. We started drilling it 2 years ago, and we began drilling constantly about a year ago. Right, so we're a year into that process. So I've been with it for a long time in terms of the company, but this project is fairly new to us, and It is a new kind of discovery. Comparing us to companies that have large resource numbers that are already public, I mean, you have to compare apples to apples. They have an incentive if they have. Canada is a huge country, so you're talking to our peers. Some of these projects are very remote, right? Some of them are very expensive to build. We're looking at a situation with what we have, where you have, with the merger of Goldcorp and Newmont in our area, right? They just made the combination. This just finalized like weeks ago. So this is a very new event. Those management teams are figuring out what they're doing with Canadian assets right now. All of the Canadian assets of Goldcorp are being evaluated by Newmont for either advancement or disposition. And what we're looking at here, in my opinion, remember, this is just my opinion, but we're looking at a very high-grade discovery just off the side of the highway, right by the power line, about a 20-minute drive from the main Red Lake gold mine. I think that if we drill very aggressively and we keep expanding that level of aggressive drilling at Dixie and show the size potential, we want to make ourselves as big and appealing as possible in the next several months. This is not years. This is not a multi-year process. We want to show that when decisions are being made in this district, somebody will end up owning or consolidating all of Red Lake. It's such a big, high-grade historical mining camp. We want to make sure that we're a bit of a magnet that other decisions glom themselves around. And that's really another component of Great Bear's strategy, is to make sure that in the time frame of months, not years, it's obvious that we are an instrumental or critical component of anybody's decision-making process. So I think that gives you a little bit more color on
Chris, I've enjoyed this conversation, and I was keen to get to talk to you again. It's one of our favorite stories out there. I think people who go on cruxinvestor.com, so you're actually number one in our ranking system, so it says a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
No, you've done the hard work. So look, I do encourage people to come and look at this story. We always like hearing what you're getting up to, and I think the strategy just stands out from the crowd, and I think it's the right thing to do. So, thanks again for your time, Chris. Appreciate that, and hopefully we'll see you next time you come through London.
Yeah, Matthew, thanks very much. Thanks for having this conversation with me again today.
Thank you very much for watching our video. We do aim to give you informed and intelligent information with which to make your investment decisions. So if you liked what you just saw, please give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more insightful, in-depth, honest, and unbiased interviews, then please click the subscribe button. So thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.